to the Stephen Cheevers Mindtrip. This is episode 1, and thank you for joining me on this podcast. I've launched this podcast because for a long time I've wanted to do a podcast myself where I talk about business, sales, but also get into the nitty-gritty stuff behind that. So look, the first few episodes, it's just going to be me. I'm going to be talking about myself, talking about my journey, giving business tips, giving sales advice. But as the episodes go on, there's going to be really interesting guests coming on. And, we're going to be deep diving into all the stuff behind the businesses, the parties we've had, the experiments we've done with drugs, the women, the lifestyle. And we're going to get into all of that stuff as well. So this podcast, I want it to be educational. I want it to be interesting, but I also want it to reflect real life as well, because there's a lot of podcasts out there. There's a lot of content creators out there that are just 100% fiction. You look at them on Instagram, you listen to them on podcasts, and it's all this, I get up at 4 a.m. every day, I hustle, and I do this and I do that. When actually they're depressed, they're drug addicts, they're alcoholics, their wife fucking hates them, their girlfriend has left them, there's all, and they never talk about any of it, right? This podcast, I want to not just talk about sales and business, but I really want to talk about the stuff that goes on behind it as well. So without any further ado, let's kick off, let's get into it. And for anybody that doesn't know me that well, doesn't know my story, maybe knows who I am, has seen some content from me, has seen the businesses I've been involved in. In this episode, I really want to talk about my own background and how I found my passion and my calling and why I love sales, and really how I went from, potentially being a high school dropout to owning a 7-figure business. And, that story is not unique to me. There's, most entrepreneurs weren't necessarily always academics. That doesn't mean they're not intelligent. Doesn't mean I'm not intelligent. But we took a different path. We took a different journey. So, let's go right back to square one. Like with me growing up, I was always getting in trouble at school. I wasn't like a bad kid. I wasn't, I was never bullying any other kids or anything like that. In fact, I had my own share of bullies growing up as well for different reasons. But I was always consistently every year, the school report card would come in and it would say the same thing. Stephen talks too much. And we joke about it now. I joke about it with my family now. In fact, I went with my grandmother recently to go vote. I was back in Northern Ireland for a period, and elections were on, so I've never missed a vote in my life. I believe it's important to vote. And the voting station that we both had to go to, because we live quite near each other, was my old primary school, like from P1 to P3. So 4 years old up till 7 years old or whatever it was. So, we were joking around, and she said, does it not feel strange being back here? And I was like, yeah. I mean, I remember it being a lot bigger. I remember being in there a lot and pointing to the principal's office, and she was like, what for? And I was saying, always talking. And she goes, oh yeah, of course, always talking. But then I joked, well, I've turned it into a fucking career now, haven't I? So we had a good laugh about that. And that's the thing when you look at kids growing up, not everybody's going to be an academic. Not everybody's going to go to university. That doesn't mean just because you haven't went to university that you can't be incredibly successful. Okay. And, there's always that adage that says, if you judged a fish on its ability to climb a tree, you'd think it was an idiot. Whatever. I'm destroying that quote, but you've heard it before, and you know what I mean. So I was always getting in trouble for school for talking too much. And as I got older, people started to say, oh, Stephen's got the gift of the gab. I could talk my way out of anything. I could talk my way into anything. And that was always destined to be a career for me. And I think a large part of why that was whenever I grew up, my father was a salesman and my grandfather was a salesman. They were both salesmen. My grandfather then went on to become an entrepreneur. more so in his 50s. He's an entrepreneur throughout his entire life, but more seriously had his big break in his 50s. So and then that goes to show you as well, like, never give up on your dreams as well. Like, he had multiple businesses that he tried and failed at, had to go back to full-time employment, and then eventually hit it big in his 50s, where he ended up having his own 7-figure business. So growing up around that, I always, like, we grew up poor. We were working class family. My parents were divorced. I saw my dad on the weekends. I grew up with my mother. We lived in I grew up with my mother in my grandparents' house. So there was, it was a 3-bedroom terrace house in East Belfast, and not a particularly nice area. It's not a nice area now. It's an area called Ballyhackamore. It's quite cosmopolitan now. It's been gentrified heavily over the years. But when I grew up, it was a rough place. And there was a paramilitary leader killed at the bottom of our street. It was a crazy place in the 90s, and I'm sure it was even more crazy before that. So I never grew up. A lot of people think that I grew up middle class or grew up wealthy. We didn't. We grew up very poor. But my father, who I only saw on the weekends, he did incredibly well for himself. He was a car salesman, one of the best car salesmen ever in Northern Ireland. Whenever I eventually got into car sales, which I'll get into a bit later, everybody was like, Cheevers, that's, because it's an unusual name. That I'm like, anything the Andy Cheevers? And I was like, yeah, it's my dad. And everybody's like, holy crap, like, if you're anything like your dad, you're going to be incredible. Yeah, he was famous amongst the car sales community and in that sort of era, for being just an unbelievable salesman. And he made a fortune selling it. Like, back in the 80s and 90s, there was a lot of commission to be made on cars. So he did very well for himself. And I used to idolize him growing up. I used to just love going to the car showroom and visiting him, and he would come home with different cars and things like that. And I'd see him on the weekends. And growing up around that, definitely, and knowing he was an incredible salesman and wanting to be just like him, that obviously subconsciously was chipping in away at me to get into sales. And then my grandfather. So, he arguably inspired me even more, because we did grow up poor, and then over time, money started to, accumulate. We started to go on nicer holidays. I never wanted for anything. I remember getting like the PlayStation 2. I remember that. I'm old now. I'm like 32. I remember when the PlayStation 2 came out, and I had it before everybody else. Like, none of my friends got it. I can't remember. It was some Christmas or something like that. I remember going back into school. I mean, I got the PS2, and everyone's like, people didn't even know it existed. Like, so I never wanted for anything. Like, he looked after me and my family so much, and like, I love him dearly. He's still alive, thankfully, and yeah, I then became accustomed to that lifestyle. I came accustomed to the lifestyle of not wanting for anything. Like, I remember getting into guitar, and there was one Christmas I'd had like a falling out with my dad, and we weren't talking and stuff like that. And my granddad was like, right, I'm going to step in here and like give him the best Christmas ever. And he basically took me to a guitar store in Belfast, like the best guitar store in Belfast. He asked my guitar teacher at the time, like, where do you get the best guitars? And he said, oh, go to this place. And he was like, what guitar do you want? And I said, oh, I want the guitar that James Hetfield from Metallica plays. And he goes, right, okay. And we went to the guy, and the guy was like, what are you after? And I said, I want the guitar that James Hetfield plays. And he opened a catalog of ESP guitars. These are all like £1,500 guitars. I was like 15 years old. And he was like, well, which one do you want? And I just went through it, and I picked the one I wanted, and we ordered it, and I got it. So growing up around that, again, like, people are probably listening to it thinking, oh, you fucking spoiled cunt. And yeah, like, there was definitely elements where potentially I was a little bit spoiled, and I was an only child. So I do have a half brother and half sister, which came along much, much later. But growing up, I was an only child, and yeah, I never wanted for anything. So, my grandfather never wanted me, or my cousins, or my mother or my aunt or any family member really to to have to want for anything. He was, there was definitely an element from him that because he'd had field businesses in the past, he maybe felt like he hadn't provided in the way he wanted whole through his career, and he wanted to almost make up for it. I think I can't, tell you what the inside of his head is saying, but that's kind of what I interpreted, and that really inspired me to want to make money, to want to be wealthy all the time. I can remember from whatever age I was when I was in my teens, where I could understand money, finance, wealth, wanting, Ferraris, wanting mansions, wanting hot women as your wife, wanting to go to cool places, all that stuff. I was just like, I have to have this. I have to have this lifestyle. So that was something that, it wasn't ingrained in me intentionally by my father and my grandfather, but that is being around that lifestyle where people, they didn't look at the price of things, they just bought, was definitely what inspired me to want to go on to find a career that was going to generate that level of wealth for me. And I had a crazy host of different potential career paths as I grew up. When like I said, my granddad got me a guitar. I did GCSE music. I played the electric guitar as my instrument for that. I think I finished on a B, did quite well, had to write my own guitar solo for it, and yeah, did, overall I passed. And but as part of that, I had a group of friends who we played in a band together. Guy called Jordy played lead guitar. He was absolutely incredible. He was always a far better guitarist than me. And we had guys that filled in on bass and drums, and yeah, and I sang, and I was a better singer than I ever was a guitar player, but I love playing rhythm guitar. I love playing guitar while singing, but and they always told me, like, because I probably tried to emulate him, but we always played Metallica covers, and they were like, "Oh, you sound just like James Hetfield," and that was like the biggest thing for me ever. And I was convinced back then, when I was like 15, I was like, we're going to start a metal band and we're going to be the next Metallica. And that was in my head. That's all I ever thought about. That's all. Like, I didn't care about anything else. Now, if I went back even further than that, like at one point I wanted to be a WWE wrestler, but I think every young boy at some point in their life wanted to be a WWE wrestler, WWF wrestler, depending on what age you are. But once you find out it's not real and all that, you kind of give up on that. So there was that, but I always wanted some form of, career that created extreme wealth or fame. I don't care about fame now. Like that's something in the past, but I wanted to be a wrestler. I wanted to be a rock star. Then as I finished my GCSEs. So for anybody listening, if you're not in the United Kingdom, GCSEs, you kind of finish when you're like 16, and then if you want to stay on and you can leave high school, or you can go to a technical college, or you can stay on and do A levels before you go to college or university when you're 18. So really when I got to that age, GCSE 16, I just stopped caring about school. I knew I wasn't an academic. I was highly intelligent. But I couldn't focus on anything. I couldn't stay focused on anything. I just didn't care about school. Growing up, I had a stepdad called Jonathan who sadly passed away when I was about 14 or 15, I believe. And he was an academic, and he made me study and revise every single night. And I used to go into high school, and I would literally get 100% on tests, 80-90%. Like if I got below like a B, like I would have got fucking shouted at. And so like I was intelligent, I could apply myself. But whenever he died, all I really cared about was music, women, PlayStation. Like I just didn't care about school anyway, because there was nobody there to force me to do that. And my mum was back to being a single mum again. And simultaneously in the same year, me and my dad stopped speaking, and we didn't really talk for about 7 years. So that was a very difficult period in my life where, again, I stopped caring about school. Whenever I got into fights with teachers, I was causing trouble. And I just didn't apply myself. I knew that, again, academics wasn't for me. And my school almost didn't, whilst I had the grades, my school almost didn't let me back in to do the sixth form, the next 2 years to go on to college, because I'd had such run-ins with particular members of staff, and they were like, "We don't want him back." And eventually, there was teachers who loved me, and like, because I can be a wee bit Marmite. People either love or hate me, and I can be quite a polarizing character. And there was teachers who are like, he is a good kid. He's not causing any real harm. He likes to cause a bit of trouble. He likes to take the piss out of people. He doesn't like to do what he's told, but he's intelligent. He should be allowed to come back. And eventually, apologized to some teachers, and they apologized to me for infractions that we had, let's say, and I was allowed to go back to sixth year. So when I went back to sixth year, then we had to do like career stuff, like what are you going to do with your life, and what are you going to do with this, and again, it goes back into like the type of the sales stuff, where at this stage in my life I hadn't really worked out that I was going to be like a salesman. It never like was never in me to go, oh, I want to sell something. I just knew I wanted to make money. And one of the only jobs that I could think of, and again, by this stage in my life I hadn't thought of leaving Northern Ireland. One of the only jobs I could think of that you could make extreme wealth with in Northern Ireland was being a lawyer. And I didn't really understand back then. And a lawyer in the UK is not like a lawyer in America. You've got solicitors and you've got barristers, and it's very difficult to become a barrister in the UK. So I went on work experience with a law firm, and I went and worked with them for a week, and learned what it was like to be a solicitor, and learned what it was like to go to court, and learned what it was like. And it was a lot of fucking paperwork. It wasn't like Harvey Specter in Suits, which is what I kind of thought it was going to be like. And I sort of came back from that, but I was still interested. I was like, you know what, I would quite like to be like a solicitor or a barrister. And then I said, what kind of grades do you need to get? And I think it was like, you needed like 3 A's or something like that. And they needed to be in specific subjects, which my school didn't even teach. And like, they didn't do history. I think history had to be one of them, and stuff. I don't know if it's still like that now, but it was back then. And so anyway, I got to the end of lower sixth, where you sort of your halfway point of sixth year, and I got a C and a D and an E. And at that point I went, right, I don't think I'm going to be a lawyer. So then I just didn't know what I wanted to do in my life. I kind of, at that stage, was just like, fuck, like a C, D, and an E is hard to even recover from. Like, what's going to be my best case scenario? Like, even best case scenario, I'm probably not going to get into university with those grades, and I don't really have it in me to try much harder. I'd also learned to drive by that stage. You can learn to drive at 17 in the UK, and I was driving around picking up girls and stuff, and going out and getting drunk. By this stage, I was going to nightclubs every weekend, and I just fucking didn't care about school at all. But again, I still knew I wanted to make money, so I had to think, like, what did I want to do? So that summer when I was 17, I actually took up mixed martial arts. So back then, it was not popular. It was, what made me take it up was I watched The Ultimate Fighter. It was Bisping v. Dan Henderson. So it was that series, and I started watching that, and I fell in love with it. And I went, this is cool as fuck. So this is way before Conor McGregor was on the scene. This is way before. I probably started MMA before Conor McGregor started MMA. That's how long ago this was. And I fell in love with it. I just fell in love with it. I was going every night of the week. I was going as often as I could. I couldn't wait to have my first fight. I was going to grappling competitions, and I was really good at it. Like, I was really, really, really good at it, and I had a real knack for it. I wasn't particularly great at the stand-up element. I don't know what it was, but I was incredibly good at the wrestling. I was incredibly good at the jiu-jitsu element, and especially the wrestling. I loved the wrestling. I loved GSP. For anybody who watched UFC back in the day, George St. Pierre, for me, I still believe is the greatest welterweight of all time. Still think he's pound for pound the best fighter of all time. And I just loved watching GSP, and I tried to emulate him. I I was probably a boring fighter to watch. I just love to wrestle. I love to take people down. I love to submit them. Um, Back then, the amateur rules, you couldn't ground and pound. You can now, I believe, but I love to practice the ground and pound, even though we couldn't do it in a real fight. And yeah, I was hooked, and that was me. That was my next thing. I just went, I'm gonna be a professional MMA fighter. I'm gonna go to the UFC. I'm gonna be the fucking world champion. I'm gonna bang, 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 bang. I'm gonna do all these things. And I went to seminars with Vanderlei Silva. I traveled to Las Vegas when I was like 18, 19 with a friend of mine, Patty, and we went and trained at Vanderlei Silva's gym. We met him. It was a very cool experience. I had my first fight, which was, it was technically, it was down as semi-pro, but it was really like an amateur fight. But whatever the way the rules were, it was actually declared as a semi-pro fight, and I won that by decision. And yeah, I just thought, I was like, this is it. I'm gonna be a professional MMA fighter. I left sixth year, and I had no intention of going to university. I got two D's and an E, and yeah, that was me. I left sixth year. I didn't go pro in terms of like I never had a professional fight or anything like that, but basically my full-time job was MMA, so you could call that professional if you want. I was never declared a pro fighter, but that was all I did. Was I just did MMA. I had no other job. I had no other income. I made no income off it. I had savings. My mother had saved up money for me from the day I was born until I was 18. She gave it to me. It ended up being like 10 grand, and I just lived off that. And I fucking went through that very, very, very quick. And I still to this day hate myself for it, because I basically burnt that 10 grand in the space of like a year of getting it. She actually gave me it early. I didn't get it when I was 18. I got it when I was 17 because I crashed my car, wheel spinning, trying to impress a girl. And I hit that fucking lamppost, and I had to get the fucking bumper repaired. So she ended up giving me the money early so I didn't have to claim off my insurance in my first year of driving. And yeah, I just burned through that 10K, going to nightclubs every weekend, eating out with friends, doing stupid shit. And then, of course, living off it for MMA. So literally got to the stage where I was going to have to sign on to the brew, as we call it in the UK. So benefits. And my family, because we did grow up poor, there was a time where I think there would have been a time where family members would have had to go on to benefits and things like that when people were between jobs. So it was, because I was almost doing it to myself intentionally rather than like looking for work, it was quite like a shameful thing amongst my family. And there were, people were like, you can't do that. You need to go and get yourself a job. You can't, like, we don't take handouts. That's not a thing that our family does. We don't take handouts. We work. We earn our living. We earn our keep. So that was fine. That was the agreement. Then I was like, right, okay, look, I'm still going to pursue this MMA, but I will get a job. I won't sign on to the dole. So, I remember, so my granddad then basically, he set me up. He knew some guy, some regional manager or something at Dunnes Stores, which is like a big department store chain in Ireland, and set me up a telephone interview with him, which I had to go to his house to do. And I think I slept in or something. I was running late, which I always am, always was. And as he phoned me in a fury, being like, "You need to get down here and get this, sorted." I was driving to his house, and I actually wasn't speeding, although I was driving fast. I was trying to get there as fast as possible. I drove down these country roads to get there as quickly as possible, and I actually was still under the speed limit. And there was a car just round a blind spot, completely stopped because of like a combine harvester, and I just went boom straight into the back of it. So wrote my car off, which didn't obviously go down well with anybody. Although the accident was not my fault. It was deemed not my fault. That combine harvester caused the accident. So because I wasn't speeding and, different things, it ended up coming out that way. So car's written off. I obviously ended up not getting that job. And through my aunt, who worked at Vodafone at the time, she called in a favor with another manager. Sorry, she worked at corporate, and she called in a favor with a manager, Kevin, and a guy called Kevin Rice. And I love this man. I owe almost my entire sales career to him, because I basically did, like, they had like not an aptitude test, but kind of like a personality test and things like that. They wanted people who were applying for jobs to like fill out and stuff. And my application never even got to him because whatever way I'd answered the questions, although I did ask my aunt for help, so partly her fault, um, my application never even reached him. So he ended up having to pull like all these stops out, basically being like, look, I want to hire this kid. I want to give him a chance, all the rest of it. So he hired me whenever I was 18. And that was my first ever sales job. It was my first ever dip into sales. So I was working a part-time job at Vodafone, at a store in a coastal town called Bangor in Northern Ireland. I was doing like 20 hours a week while still doing MMA full time. And and yeah, that was where it all started for me. That's where sales all started for me. I had taken no sales courses. I'd done no training. He showed me the ropes, and he was like, this is how we do it. And there was another, there was a girl called Sonia there and a guy called Graham, and they were more senior members of staff, and they taught me how to use, the systems, and, taught me about the products and things like that. And that was where it all started for me, because I was just like incredible at it from like the word go. Like I would just be able to sell anything to anyone. I was, it was just gift of the gab. It was literally just like a natural ability. And that changed my perspective on everything, because I realized very quickly that when I got my first ever commission check, I was like, I fucking love making money. I don't really love getting hit in the face. And when I looked at all the other pro fighters in the gym, the real pros, not me, who was a wannabe, like none of those guys were making money. They were already 5 years ahead of me. Nobody was making money. Nobody was getting to the UFC. Nobody was getting any opportunities. Anytime they were taking fights against guys from America that might get them a look into the UFC, they were getting their asses handed to them. And they only really started to kick on when they started to leave Northern Ireland and move to other gyms in the mainland, the UK or America and places like that. And then they started to get to a level where, but again, I don't know any of them that have went on to, because we didn't have the stuff that the people, the MMA gyms that people have nowadays. We didn't have that back then. And again, this is still like way before Conor McGregor was still 5-6 years, maybe even more than that away. And yeah, so we just didn't have the opportunities those guys had. And it just grabbed me and just took me. And I just went, I'm fucking awesome at this. And over time, I went from 20 hours, and then I would do overtime. And then Kevin moved to another store. He moved to a much bigger store. He got a promotion and he brought me with him. And I moved up to 30 hours. And I'm still doing the MMA, but the MMA was I wasn't able to do it as much. And it was one of those sports that if you didn't continuously do all the time, you weren't sharp. The guy that is going every night of the week 2 times a day, he's kicking your ass because you're only going 4 times a week, or you're only doing this, you're only doing that. Vodafone was a great opportunity for me, and it was just a great place to start my sales career. And like I said, it gave me the bug. And the more hours I did there, I eventually, quit the MMA. I went all in on the sales. My commissions just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But one thing that I realized about working there was, I was maybe making 24 grand a year, which for a 20-year-old, 19-year-old, it was great. It was good money. I was living with my grandmother at the time. I was going out with my friends every weekend, but I just looked at the career path and I was like, right, this is all well and good, but how am I ever going to buy a fucking Ferrari with this? I never was going to be able to. So, from there, I started to look at like, right, what's the next logical step in my career? And I looked back at what my dad did. And my dad obviously made a lot of money in the car sales game. So I applied for a job with Toyota, and I ended up getting it. And then I had a sales manager there, a guy called Ross, who was another incredible salesman and, sales mentor in my life. And a guy who I'm still very good friends with to this day, a guy called Neil Ferguson. He showed me a lot of the ropes as well. And I learned a lot about sales from those guys too. And Toyota was a difficult sales gig because it was a strange product that you had to learn how to sell. But I'm so glad that I went there, because that place changed everything for me. the product was difficult to sell because it wasn't a premium product. It didn't sit with Audi, Mercedes, BMW, but it was more premium than a Renault or a Peugeot or any of those cars. So it sat in this kind of strange little zone where it was the people looking to buy it couldn't afford it because it was more expensive than a Renault and a Peugeot. And the people who could afford an Audi or BMW, etc., they would buy that. They wouldn't buy a Toyota. So there wasn't a lot of opportunity. We had to prospect a lot. We had to do a lot of offers. We had to do a lot of deals. We had to really sell the product. So it was a hard sales gig. But I did pretty well there. And I was consistently the highest every month for we had this thing called NPS. If you worked in sales, you may have had it. And I just developed a system where, and I was number one for NPS and Vodafone as well, but I developed a system where I basically just coached the person into giving me the top marks, and I just sold them. I sold them on it. I sold them as to why they needed to do it for me. And people loved that because sales managers loved that because they got paid bonuses off of it. So and you got paid bonuses off of it too. So with me, they knew 100% of the time. They're like, oh, he's going to get 100% marks. So it was very few that I didn't throughout my entire sales career get 100% NPS. So but what changed the game for me in Toyota was I distinctly remember, I can't remember how long I was there. It must have been within my first sort of 6 months because I'm trying to remember the team that was there. And basically Ross came to me, like it was a boys club. It was very much a boys club. And Ross looked after his boys. And Ross came to us and he was like, the Wolf of Wall Street's in town. We have to go see the Wolf of Wall Street. And I had never seen the movie by this stage. And I was like, I don't know who that is. And he's like, Jordan Belfort. And I was like, no, I don't know. Like, bear in mind again, like the movie had only came out in the last year. I hadn't went to see it. I'd never even heard of it. And I hadn't been, I wasn't this like veteran sales guy. Like I'd done, 2 years in a phone shop and then, 6 months to date in this car sales arena. So it wasn't like sales was my life like it is now. And they were like, they basically were all making fun of me and stuff like this because they knew that I loved the party and they knew that I loved money and they knew that I loved women. And they were like laughing. They were like, you need to fucking watch this movie. You're going to you out anybody, you're going to fucking love The Wolf of Wall Street. Like, you need to go and watch it. So that night, like, I can't remember if I downloaded it or I ordered it off Amazon or whatever. If I had to order it off Amazon, it wouldn't have been that night. But let's say that week, right? I got The Wolf of Wall Street, stuck the Blu-ray in, and bear in mind I was living with my grandmother at the time as well. I didn't know what it was going to be like at all. So she sat and watched it with me, which was so uncomfortable. Like that scene where Margot Robbie's, fucking completely naked, getting fucking reeled by him. Like, imagine watching that with your grandmother. Like, that was one of the most uncomfortable moments of my fucking life. But anyway, I watched this movie, right? She eventually left. She was like, I can't watch this anymore. And I remember watching that movie. Now, look, I was 21 at the time. I had done my fair share of cocaine. I had been to Amsterdam. You can read between the lines on that. I liked the party. I liked women. I was nowhere near making that amount of money. But I watched that movie and I was like, I want to fucking be him. I wanted, like that scene where he's like, I'm not fucking leaving. Like, that's me into the mic right now. I wanted to fucking be him so badly. I was like, I want that life. I have to have that life. And bear in mind, if I can, like, we can rewind a little bit. I've wanted that life since I was like 15 years old, right? I maybe didn't know about the cocaine and the hookers and like all that type of stuff, but I knew I wanted a life of extreme wealth. Like the opening scene where he's driving the Ferrari and he's like, my Ferrari wasn't red. No, my Ferrari was white, like Don Johnson from Miami Vice. And then he's getting a fucking blowjob from Margot Robbie in the front seat, right? I remember watching that and just being like, this guy is the fucking man. And I remember coming in the next day and being like, right, where's this guy's seminar? When are we going to see it? Like, I want to see this, right? And so like they're all laughing and stuff, being like, we fucking knew you'd love that movie. And somehow Ross, in his infinite wisdom, like the guy was a G. He managed to convince the company that we worked for that this would be, and it was a sales seminar. He didn't lie, but like it was the Wolf of Wall Street. That this sales seminar would be incredibly beneficial to all of the sales staff, and like they should pay for us to go because the tickets they weren't cheap. They weren't like it wasn't like $20 to go see him. It was like hundreds. So yeah. Anyway, he convinced the company to pay for it, and they did. So we basically all got left work early. Whatever day it was down in Dublin. I think it was the first. It was the first. He's been to Dublin a couple of times. The first time he came, and I remember standing or sitting in the auditorium where it was, and he comes out on stage, and he's just looking out in the crowd, and he's like, "Do you remember this?" And he goes, "Oh," and everybody's going, "Oh, oh, 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 oh," and then he just goes, "Stop doing that shit. That wasn't real." And everyone's like, "Oh," and he goes, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. They wrote that for the movie. That didn't happen." And I don't know what that accent was. I can actually do a much better fucking Jordan Belfort than that. But anyway, hey, this is live, right? So moving on. Anyway, he teaches his straight line sales system to us over the next couple of hours. We get like workbooks to take away with us with a sales script in it. And yeah, from there, like that just changed the game for me. Like I remember watching him on stage. Like the amount of notes that I took, and I remember leaving going like, I'm not doing 95% of this stuff. Like this is genius. This is going to change the game, and it did change the game for me. I became a much better salesperson from that moment, and I couldn't prospect for shit before that. Like I left with that cold call script. My prospecting went through the roof. My sales numbers went through the roof. Just how I approach sales went through the roof. I was already good at selling, but I was good at it because I was naturally good at it. I was born with a gift, the gift of the gab, or whatever you want to call it. Like I just had a natural rapport with people, and I could sell them, and I could convince them to do what I wanted. But having this system, which, there was an actual purpose about why you're saying this word, where you're saying it, how you're adjusting your tonality and your voice, all of these intricate, I don't know. Anyway, fuck it. All of these little deliberate things that you're doing that I wasn't doing deliberately before. I was probably just doing them, but I was like unconsciously competent. And then this was making me consciously competent. So like I said, that completely changed the game for me. I went on to actually do his course. I managed to get it online, and I did his straight line persuasion system, and that became like the backbone of basically my entire sales career. I don't want to talk about like everything that I've done in sales forever because you're going to get bored and you're going to turn this off. But from there, I ended up leaving Toyota. In my last couple of weeks there, they were filming a reality TV show, and which I was on, which became like a national embarrassment for everybody involved. And then I went to work for Audi, and the TV show came out, and I almost fucking lost my job within like the first 2 weeks there because like they were like, we can't have this dickhead working here. All like people were coming in being like, is that guy from the TV show? And yeah, so because I thought I was Mr. Cool on the fucking TV show, like chatting shit and this, that, and the other. Didn't realize it would haunt me for like the next year. So anyway, went on to Audi. In my first year at Audi, I was the most profitable salesperson. I won like the best newcomer award and stuff like that. And I had the most profit per car. One thing I was incredible at doing at Audi, which others just couldn't grasp, was like selling cars for like list price, like the sticker price or whatever you want to call it. And like, because everybody went out and assumed you had to give a discount. Like I would go out and be like, yeah, this is the price, and just stop talking. Like I would do the stuff that I'd learned from Belfort, and people would be like, yeah, okay, cool, sounds good. So like I had incredibly profitable deals whilst I was there. From there, I then moved on to a job in Dubai, which I thought was going to be my big break. I got approached on LinkedIn. I got approached on LinkedIn all the time by people that wanted to hire me for different roles in sales. And, I had a bit of a name for myself locally. amongst the motor trade, as you know, I was pretty shit hot. But again, I was still kept going back to being like, you know, I was sitting in Audi and I was thinking like, is this my big break? Like, am I going to become a millionaire? Am I going to drive a Ferrari? Am I going to do all these different things if I stay at Audi? And the answer was no. And I got approached on LinkedIn by a company in Dubai who sold financial advisory services to expats living out there. My only experience with Dubai at that stage, and again, I was about 24 at the time, was my aunt and uncle going there on holiday and loving it. And I thought, yeah, fuck it, okay. And they were, you know, I had a sales call with a recruitment call, I should say. Yeah, it was more like a sales call, the way they were pitching it to me. But they were telling me, like, you're going to come in here, like, you know, our lowest earners make 100K. Like, there's people making 500K a year. There's some people even make $1 million a year. Blah, 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 blah. It was all very Wolf of Wall Street, which very much appealed to me at 24 years old, because I was like, holy shit, this is going to be my big fucking break here. Sorry, I was 23. I wasn't 24. I was 23. And I was like, right, this is it. This is the big break. Like, I'm going to go to Dubai. And because I thought so highly of myself as a salesperson, and any good salesperson thinks they're the best salesperson on earth. And if you don't think that, then you can't be that good. Like, I genuinely believe, whether it's naive or not, that I am one of the greatest sales people on earth. Like, I believe that. And, you know, you can put me up against like the famous people like Jordan Belfort and Cole Gordon and, you know, Andy Elliott and all these different guys. And they all sound different to me, and I sound different than them. And Eli Wild is another one that I respect massively. And, but every single one of them will believe that they are the greatest salesperson on earth. And if you don't, then you just aren't backing yourself enough. So back then when I was 23, even at 23, I was like, I am one of the fucking greatest salespeople on this earth. So if there's shit guys who are making 100K a year, fuck, I'm going to make like $500,000 easy. So I packed all my bags and I fucking moved to Dubai, quit my job at Audi. And I went out there, and I mean, these guys basically sold me a pip. Like they were like, oh yeah, you're going to arrive, you're going to have all your appointments set for you, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. And I was like, cool, I just need to show up the appointments and sell. I can fucking do that. I got there was no appointment setter. They didn't even process my visa, so I was technically working there. You know, I don't know if it was illegal or not, but like I wasn't on a tourist visa. I did have but it wasn't like a real work visa. It was kind of like a temporary one. So I kept having to drive to the fucking border of Oman to keep getting a reset. And because they would only process your visa for you whenever you had done your first deal. And this is the other thing, they told you there's a basic salary, but when you got there was no basic salary until you did your first deal either. So I was like eating into my life savings. So I had about 15 grand saved up that I had planned to put on a deposit for a house. Instead, I bet it all on myself to go out to Dubai and make my millions basically. And I went out there. They could see, like, the manager I had, this guy called Chris, and he was a gentleman, and I love that guy, and he taught me a lot about sales and, you know, different types of selling too, and business development, because really up to that point I'd only worked retail sales. I hadn't really done any business development sales, and he really, you know, nurtured me through that as well. And going out there, like, again, I learned a lot about business development, things like that, but I had to set my own fucking meetings. I had to do my own cold calls, and I hated cold calling, and I didn't want a job that involved cold calling. But they actually ended up giving me a setter early, because they were like, you know what, I think this guy's got something here. He just needs more meetings. I was on the verge of closing a deal, like an absolutely enormous deal that would have made 10 grand commission on. I was down to, I would say, I went from 15 grand down to about 7 grand in my savings. I was starting to sweat a little bit, because I was like, I really need this to really take off soon. And I wasn't enjoying Dubai. I didn't enjoy the lifestyle. I didn't enjoy the people. I didn't enjoy the country. I wasn't enjoying any aspect of it. I was just there for the money. And just like the day before the guy was to sign this contract, it was gonna make me 10 grand a commission. So it was gonna make like the company even way more. It was a huge deal. For that to have been your first deal would have been like borderline historic. Like everybody was like waiting for this deal to close. They were like, holy shit, you're gonna be like the fucking king. And if that's your first deal. And the guy basically comes back to me. He was a guy from New Zealand, really nice guy, and he was like, look, there's been a family emergency in New Zealand. This was like, I want to say September time. He goes, we're going back to New Zealand until like late November, start of December. I'll sign it then when I get back. And I was just went, oh, I just lost all enthusiasm for it, because whilst I had other deals in the pipeline, they were all small deals, like $1,000 here, $4,000 here. Like, I was just like, fuck, man, that just took the wind out of my sails. My mom and aunt came out to visit me just coincidentally around the same time, and I was already really homesick. And whenever I saw them, I just went, this isn't for, like, I just went, I'm coming home. This isn't for me. Like, I love the job. I love the people that I worked with. I loved every aspect of the job. I loved the opportunity to make that kind of money selling. But I fucking hated Dubai, man. I fucking hated Dubai. And like, one of my best friends and business partners, Tony McAlevey, he lives out in Dubai, and he's always trying to get me out to it. And I'm like, nah, I fucking hate it. I've never been back. I hate it. I'm 32 now. That was when I was 23. I've never been back. So anyway, I licked my wounds. I moved home. I already gave me my job back right away because I was such a fucking G when I was there. And I just got back to selling. And I then the next year bought my first house, and I just sort of went back to it. So from there I moved on to, and by the way, this is where the story is gonna hopefully start to get interesting for you. From then I went on to work for Vodafone corporate. So I actually went back to Vodafone, but this time in the corporate world, which was business development, out in the road, selling to companies almost door to door. And this is where I really knew that I without sucking my own dick here, I really knew that I was something fucking special at sales. In my first year there, my target was to make a company 300 grand, and I did something like 1.3 million or something. I did a deal with a company that I door knocked on, so I was going door to door because we were trying to drum up business. I ended up doing a deal with these guys that was, I think it was maybe 300 grand. I think it was like 165 grand of annual order value, which was our target. So 165 went towards my target. My target was 300 for the year. And then they went on to do an IoT deal with me, which had been unheard of in Northern Ireland, to do a deal of this size. It was unheard of almost in the entire of the UK business, for regional business, to do a deal of this size. I'm still pretty sure it is. I'm pretty sure it was a record at the time, and I'm be surprised if it probably has been broken by now. But also when it closed, it was coming up towards the end of the year. They were trying to incentivize people, so they uncapped the commission and they put multipliers on it as well. So I closed this deal. It was worth 1.1 million. I think I finished again like 1.3 million against my target for the year. My target was 300 grand. I think my commission on that deal was like over 70 grand or something. It was fucking insane. And I was number one salesperson, and I ended up being invited to this thing called Premier Club. I actually still have I keep it on my desk, this little award, Premier Club, which basically is an award for all the top sales guys in different departments within Vodafone. So for regional business, I went to it. Took my friend Jack. We went to Tuscany. Really incredible experience. So this is where I know I get into entrepreneurship. So, I've been on this sales journey. Again, I just can't fucking scratch this itch for wanting to be an entrepreneur, wanting to be a multimillionaire, right? So in my spare time with a friend of mine, I start to develop an app called Allure, which was basically a marketplace for fitness professionals to sell their online coaching services and their programs. And again, back whenever I was 24, online coaching wasn't a huge thing. And I actually started Allure, sorry, going back, my memory's bad. I actually started Allure while I was still at Audi before I moved to Vodafone. I started building it in the background, but it didn't really get serious until I was sort of at Vodafone. And that's basically where I joined my first ever business mentorship program. I was trying to pitch it to a fitness business mentor that I knew through some friends. And he ended up pitching me to join the mentorship program. And that was probably, the best thing that I ever did was joining that program, because I then went on to meet my business partner Tony McAlevey. We started together on the same day, so we became great friends from that, and we ended up growing an incredible business that we have today from that. But so back then I had Allo, it was called. We eventually launched it. I think we had about 1,000 users on it at one point, but it just wasn't making any money. And then that's when fucking COVID hit. It felt like we were just about to start making some money, and we were speaking to investors, and the next thing was COVID fucking hit. And all the investors we were speaking to were like, we're not investing in anything right now until we know what happens with this. So at this stage, I'm borderline fucking going bankrupt, because I've put all my money into this. I've got a mortgage. I'm paying like a business mentor. I'm paying for all these different things, and I'm just not making any fucking money. And that's when I start to really sweat, because at this stage I've invested about 30 grand into this. So I'm about 30 grand in debt. I've got a mortgage coming out every month. I'm paying a business mentor who I'm in a contract with. And this is one of the things that, this is just me, like, whenever I sign a contract with someone, whenever I sign an agreement, I just believe that, like, if you're a man and you're a man of your word, doesn't matter what kind of hardship you get into, you find a way to honor your agreements. So I remember my mother coming around and being like, well, you're canceling that. And I'm like, no, I'm not, because I'm in a contract with him. She goes, well, you need to find a way to get out of it. And I said, no, it's actually very beneficial to what I'm doing, but also, I've signed an agreement and I believe in honor in that. So, I continued to just put myself more and more into debt. And this was where the turning point was for me, because I had to decide what I was doing. And really I was starting to get to the stage where there was almost no way out. Like, what do I do here? Because this thing is not making me any money. I've got all these debts. I still don't want to give up on myself, because I've always believed in fucking backing myself. Like, when I went to Dubai, I backed myself. Whenever I started Allo, I backed myself. Like, I was convinced I was gonna be a success no matter what. Like, even when I was 30 grand in debt, I was like, I'm gonna be a fucking success. And what I had learnt as a skill throughout that period of time was how to do Facebook ads. And what I did was, I actually went to the business mentor and said to him, look, I've been helping some of the guys, because I was for free. I was helping these guys in this business mentorship program who were all making like 10 grand a month, while I'm sitting 30 grand in debt. Still employed by Vodafone at this stage, like making, decent money, decent commission. But I was still 30 grand in debt. And I basically said, look, I'm helping these guys for free with their Facebook ads. These guys are making a fortune. I'm kind of fucked financially. Do you mind if I actually like sell Facebook ads to these guys? And he just turned around to me and goes, I can't believe you're fucking not already selling it to them. So I went, right, okay, cool. And basically overnight I pivoted Allo. I just closed up shop and Allo. I went, this isn't going anywhere. Fuck this. I'm going to keep I've already got a limited company open. I'm just going to pivot it into a marketing agency. I launched a marketing agency called Fit Pro Tech Consultants, which again was a consultancy service for systems and Facebook ads. We did a lot more systems work at the start, and then we just really niched down into Facebook ads. But in my first month, with that, I made 10K. My first month was a 10K month, because I just basically turned around to everybody I was helping for free, and I was like, look, I'm going to start charging for this now. I have to. It's taking up too much of my time, and I set a pretty reasonable price on it to begin with. I also sold some packages for systems and things like that. So yeah, my first real month doing it was 10K. I think like I was sort of doing it a wee bit on the side to begin with. I made like a couple of grand and stuff like that. But my first month where I just went, I'm going to do this full time. I made 10K, and within 8 months I'd made 100 grand. So I cleared all my debts, and I went all in on it. And one of the key reasons that I was able to scale that business so fast was because of how good a salesman I was, guys, people would inquire with me and they would say, look, this is what I want to do with Facebook ads. And I was very easily able to, sell them into the program that I was offering, and the solution I was offering, and the service I was offering. So, and our retention was good as well. Like, we kept people. So, very quickly I was doing 10K months, 15K months, 20K months, in a very, very, very short period of time. And that business went on to be multi six figures. I remember looking back after my second year, we'd made like $250,000. And it was absolutely insane. So, what I would say, and obviously I quit my job at Vodafone and went all in on it. So, and then we hired staff and things like that. So, what I would say if you're listening to this, and, you're afraid to take gambles on yourself, is bet on yourself while you can. Look for mentors, look for programs, look for courses, look for these different things that can teach you what it is you want to learn, whether that's sales, whether it is Facebook ads, whether it's marketing, content, business mentorship, whatever it is. Bet on yourself while you're young and take more risks while you're young. If you're now this doesn't mean that, if you're not under 30 and you have a mortgage, that you shouldn't do this as well. But if you're listening to this right now and you're under 30, and you don't have the responsibilities of a family, mortgage, or any of those obligations that start to come as you get older, bet on yourself now. Even if it doesn't pay off, even if you hire a business mentor, you buy a course, you buy a program, and it doesn't pay off, or you put yourself into debt like I did, right? That doesn't mean, like, I still learned a lot. I learned more than any other period of my life through then. And I would tell you, just, back yourself while you can, because see, once you get older, like right now, I would find it more difficult to, like, I have a mortgage that's nearly £1,900 a month. I'm 32, right? I don't have a family or kids yet, but it's all right for me to say now, being like a 7-figure entrepreneur, but if, like, right now, it would be very difficult for me to invest as easily in myself or take gambles and risks in myself that I would have done when I was 23, 24. So if you're still living with your parents, that's what I would say to you, is take as many risks as you can now. Move city. Like, even though I moved to Dubai and it didn't really pay off for me, I still met a guy called Sam Syed, and he's still one of my greatest friends to this day. But he's been an incredible contact for me, both personally and professionally. And if I'd never been to Dubai, I would never have met him. And he's working on some incredible startups this day. And I know that long term that me and him will help make each other money. And, had I not gambled on myself to go out to Dubai, I wouldn't have done that. Had I not gambled on myself to launch Allo and then join that business mentorship, I never would have met Tony. I wouldn't have any of the stuff that I have now. I wouldn't get to live in Miami. I wouldn't get to, live in a big house. I wouldn't get to do all these different things that I've got to do with my life. I wouldn't have the experiences that I've had. I wouldn't have went to Hawaii last year. I wouldn't be going to Fiji next month. All of these things have come from gambling on myself. I'm a huge believer in doing that. So if you can and you have the opportunity, gamble on it. So that's basically, that's kind of how I ended up getting to where I am today. Over 2 years ago now, I'd taken the agency kind of as far as I'd wanted to go with it. And me and Tony had been in different mentorship programs. I'd worked in mentorship programs. I'd paid for mentorship programs. And we kind of felt like there was a disconnect between the way the mentors wanted to run the program and the way that we felt like the program should be run. And that's why we developed the Coaches Mentorship. And we launched that over 2 years ago. It's an incredible business now. We've helped hundreds of coaches transform their lives. And that's how I got to where I am today. So that's basically the fucking story of how I got here. So now I want to, before, I land this plane, I know it's been a long episode, but before I sort of wrap things up, I want to make sure that you leave this podcast. If you've listened to it this far, I really appreciate you. And I want to make sure that you actually leave this with some real value, because I've kind of just sort of went through, a story there. Hopefully there's little bits of value that you've taken from it, but I want to give you some real value that you can actually take away. So, and more recently, I've been working on a sales course, which I'm planning to launch very soon, called the Trojan Horse sales system. And the whole concept behind the Trojan Horse sales system is, you've maybe listened to what I've been saying over this last hour or so about how I sell. And I sell in a format that is, you don't feel like you're being sold to. I'm talking to you, I'm asking you the right questions, I'm hitting little pain points. I'm reconfirming with you. I'm asking permission for things. I'm doing all these different things that are all very deliberate. But you feel like throughout the whole process that you can trust me and that I can give you the level of service that you're after and I can solve your problems. And that's what the Trojan Horse sales system is all about. And, I've went through there, saying you should bet on yourself as well. So make sure if you have that opportunity to invest in things like what I did with Jordan Belfort when I invested in his program. It changed the game for me, because you might think that you're awesome at something now, but once you see somebody who's truly awesome at it doing it, that is going to change a lot for you. So, some of the most important lessons that I've learned from mentors in my time have been to continuously invest in yourself, continuously improve yourself. One of the greatest, my current mentor, one of the greatest quotes he ever said to me was, I was asking him for the latest trick, the latest hack, the latest this, the latest that. I said, what's working now? And he said, well, what works for you now? And I said, oh, we've been doing this works. And he goes, what else are you doing? I goes, this, but it's not really working. He goes, all right, do less of that and do more of the other stuff. Just do the stuff that works and stop forgetting about what doesn't work. And I was like, fuck. Yeah, okay. And we added like 20, 30K revenue just from doing that, just from stopping arsing about on other things and actually leaning into the what worked. So, for me, there's 3 different ways of doing sales. There's the old school way, back in the 80s and 90s, the high pressure boiler room sales like Wolf of Wall Street, which were like aggressive and, you're just beating people down until they eventually cave and they say yes. Then became, and I learned this from Jordan Belfort as well, so I need to make sure I shout him out. But then there became consultative selling, where it wasn't aggressive and it was very much like a consultation process. And, you maybe did let people go away and think about it, and you maybe tried to, you tried to do your best to close them, but there was no aggression whatsoever. And then, you've got the way that I do it, which is kind of a hybrid of both, where it's friendly, it's fun, it's consultative in the way that they don't feel like they're being sold to, but we can turn up the heat when we need to, and we can make them feel a certain way that allows them to close. So, it's definitely possible to dress like the Wolf of Wall Street, to act like the Wolf of Wall Street, but still have a laugh with people, still get the deal done in the day without compromising, your own ethics and your morals and just being a good person. So hopefully, you've enjoyed listening to me today. There's going to be a lot more episodes with a lot more value in them. But I hope that this gives you a good background about me, where I've come from, how I've gotten into sales, and hopefully there's elements of the story that you can resonate with that, will inspire you to take action on your own dreams and inspire you to take action on, going after whatever it is you want to go after, whether that be entrepreneurship, whether that just be getting a promotion or, doing whatever it is you want with your life. Because ultimately, whilst all I ever wanted was to be a fucking multimillionaire, and, I'm still not where I want to be yet either. By the way, I'm not like the finished product. This is not me sitting preaching to you and being like, oh, I'm a multimillionaire and I'm this and that. Because I'm not even where I want to be yet. Until I get the fucking white Ferrari like Belfort with the blonde give me a blowjob as I'm driving, I'm not where I want to be yet, right? And yeah, jokes aside, like, it's all about being persistent. It's all about being resilient, and it's also all about like consistently learning. Like, I'm always looking for who can I learn from next? Who can I invest in that's going to take me to the next level? Like, who can I work with next? Who can I partner with next? Who can I collaborate with next to grow my business to where I want it to be? Because I have a vision for where I want my business to be. Like, I don't want it to be 7 figures. I want it to be 8 figures. And I want to take it as far as it can humanly go. There's other side projects I'm working on as well, which, we've got huge ambitions for, hundreds of millions worth of value, not just like 7 or 8 figures. So, you know, whatever you do, go in it all in, invest in what you need to invest in. And, if you can't, like, don't be afraid to invest in yourself. That's the number one thing I want you to take away from this episode, because that's just the one thing that I've never been afraid to do. I've always been able to back myself. I've always been able to invest in myself. I've always been able to go, fuck yes, you're the fucking man and we're going to fucking do this. I've never for a second not backed myself or seen an opportunity and went, I can't do that. So if you're not doing that, then you need to have a look at your mindset. And I work with a mindset coach now. I'm going to give him a shout out, a guy called Kieran O'Neill. He's an incredible person who's helped me tap in and unlock parts of my brain that I didn't think were possible. And that's actually something I didn't even cover off today. Was, we go back, I can't believe I even forgot, I fucking left it out. We go back to when I was a kid. Like, why was I always distracted all the time? Why was I never able to shut up? Why couldn't I stop talking? Why couldn't I just do my schoolwork? And the thing was, I was undiagnosed ADHD, and Kieran helped me learn that and live with that. I'd been diagnosed by a therapist before Kieran. I was going to therapy for something else. They did a cognitive test with me, or whatever it's called, and they were like, yeah, look, you have ADHD. And I remember telling my mum, and my mum being like, you don't have ADHD. And I was like, no, I do. I've done this test and it says I've got ADHD. And he goes, well, the doctor never diagnosed you ADHD. And I go, I know, but I grew up in the early 90s, mum, like it maybe just wasn't a thing. She goes, there was kids with ADHD and you didn't have it. And I was like, right, okay. And then I went on to work with Kieran, and he was like, yeah, you definitely have ADHD. And it's a spectrum. It's not like, whenever I grew up in primary schools and things like that, like, if you had ADHD, you were fucking retarded basically. And I don't know, like, wherever you are, whatever school you were in and stuff, but in my school you had like there was special needs schools obviously, but like in my school you had just like, I know this is not the right terminology, but you had the normal kids, like the everyday kids, and then there was always like a small percentage of the class that were like, they were retarded basically. They were like fucking, there was something wrong with these kids, like they had ADHD or autism or fucking, whatever. They weren't special enough to go to a special needs school, but they needed looked after. And mum's like, well, you weren't even close to that. You were highly intelligent. You were always one of the top in your class. And I was like, I know, but I think it's like a spectrum, mum, and it works a little bit differently. And yeah, it was just undiagnosed. So living with that as well, that made so much sense to me, as like, I didn't get diagnosed with that till I was like 30 or over 30 anyway. But living, like, I always wondered like why my brain worked differently to other people's. Like, why was I so good at some things, like sales, for example, but I just couldn't fucking like study long enough to pass a test? Why couldn't I do this, but I could do like all these other things? There was certain aspects of creative things I was incredible at. And I think a lot of that comes down to like why I had so much confidence to always bet on myself, and I would always take like massive risks. That was one thing my mum hated about me. She was like, you've always got it good, and then you have to take a huge risk on yourself, and then you lose it all, and you do this, you do that. But those risks are why I am where I am now, because had I not put myself into 30 grand of debt chasing a dream, I would never have went on to do all the things I'm doing now. I launched that app, didn't really know what I was doing, joined that mentorship, met Tony, met incredible people, met some of my best friends, like one of my best friends, Keegan, met him through that as well, met multiple people through that program, learned what business mentorship even was, and put myself into that level of debt. Had I not put myself into that level of debt, gambling on myself, I never would have launched my Facebook ads agency. I never would have become a business owner that could have credibility to launch a business mentorship program like what I have now. Where now I'm like changing lives week in and week out, which I'm incredibly proud of. So all of these things stem back to me being able to gamble on myself, take huge risks, and go all in on stuff, which a lot of people just aren't willing to do nowadays. And if you're listening to this right now, I'm going to wrap this up because it's going on a bit long now. But if you're listening to this right now and, you still are on the fence about investing in something, invest in a program, maybe you're listening to this to get a better idea of me before you invest in one of my programs. Hopefully, you'll have enjoyed listening to me. If you are, maybe you'll have listened to this and been like, Jesus Christ, that guy said retarded. I'm not fucking investing in that guy. But so sorry for any language I've used in this. I am a little retarded myself. And going back to it, had I not gambled on myself, had I not taken risks, had I not bet on myself, had I not invested in becoming a better salesperson, better at my craft, better at everything, then I wouldn't have any of the stuff I have now. I would probably still be living in that house, the original house that I bought, not the one I'm in now, just outside of Belfast. I'd probably still be, in a sales job, maybe making like 50 grand a year. But I don't want to make 50 grand a year. I want to make 50 grand a day. I want to 50 grand a year. Like, that's the thing about fucking, Northern Ireland, where I'm from, is people, they get to an age, they meet a girl or boy, they get married, they have kids, they're content making 40 to 50 grand a year for the rest of their life. They retire when they're like 67 and then they fucking die. I don't want to make 50 grand a year. I want to make 50 grand a fucking day. That is all I care about now. It's like, I want to make 50 grand a fucking day. Never mind 50 grand a year. That is where I'm at right now. So if that's you too, subscribe to the podcast, keep listening, because there'll be more episodes going into much more detail on more practical stuff. You've had story time with Stephen Cheevers. You don't need any more story time with me. And from here on out, let's get fucking rich together. See you later, motherfuckers.